Hi everyone. So this is my first foray into this faux bubble glaze technique. I am using just a 3-inch tulip jar. It is going to be elevated off of my plate a bit just because I don't want to create a rim of color. There's nothing wrong with creating a rim of color. That's what essentially this technique does. But for me, I don't want that right now. I'm using cheap Dollar Tree paint. I'm not a paint connoisseur. Please don't ask me for advice about paint. I don't know. Paint is paint. That is my truth. I am taking a few blobs of paint, a few blobs of dish soap, and I'm going to use just enough water to make sure I don't make it too thin. You'll see that coming up. That is right around the bottom level of the solo cup. That is just enough to give it um, enough liquid to create bubbles. Just not too much to thin it out. I did play with the levels of water. This was enough for me. Um, I hope that is understood. I'm not a paint person. If you are, that's great. If you have a favorite paint, that's great. I don't. I like folk art metallic paint, but for the rest of it, I don't use really. So I don't care. Anything should work. I don't I don't know. But here we go. For this, just blow. Really, just blow bubbles. You're a kid again. You can create bubbles. It's not that hard. Now, I did see this technique on YouTube. It's done with ceramic vessels and they use a glazing medium. Now, I can't use the glazing medium for cement vessels because that's meant to be fired in a kiln. And you can't do that with cement vessels or hydrostone because our pieces would turn to dust. So there's no point in using glazing mediums. So I'm not going to create the big luxurious bubbles that I see here, but I figured this is good enough and I'll continue to experiment and attempt to find something that may work better. Maybe I won't find it. I don't know. But I'm pretty much that person. I'm not really going to ask. I'll just research and do an experiment until I find something or land on something. And then, ta-da! Look at me. This is what I did. And there you have it. But I'm pretty pleasantly surprised. Like, it seems simple enough, just colorful paint bubbles. I've been looking at it and looking at it, and I'm like, okay, we're doing paint bubbles tonight. And I finally did it. Now, my base color with this is, I'm gonna butcher the name. It's like a peachy color. I use this particular one is a Simmental Laticrete mix that I typically use for my vessels. So it is a base color already. And I just thought I'd do like a rose gold sort of bowl mix. It's muted in a way, not so stark. And I guess you'll see what happens as we go along with this. I feel chatty almost. Rock with me here. Um, I'm mixing up the rose gold metallic paint right now from folk art. This is, I guess, what I mean by the metallic overlay to create the sheen that I like. So I'm going to be doing 2 layers on this vessel. And I just find it gives it an extra something. I guess we all kind of use this paint in our vessels, and it's no different here. It just creates a nice effect with the bubbles on top of the acrylic base layer that I used already. So now that the first layer of bubbles are dissipating, I don't wipe. I'm patting the bubbles in place. Now, this is my first refinement from the original one that I did, was touching the vessel. I'm not touching it with my hands, and I'm also elevating it off of the plate. I'm really patting the bubbles in place. And I think even with this one, I learned my lesson after the fact, because you'll see it in the video at the end, to not even do this part of patting. Actually, I'm not even sure, but the bubbles will just pop, and it'll just maybe just letting it dry in place. Instead of just even doing this at all, I might skip this step altogether and just letting it dry in place. And it's actually a very quick dry, maybe about 5 minutes or so. And then you can go in with your second layer. I guess I'm just speeding this up or doing it really quickly for time for this video. But if I had to do this again, I would probably just let it dry before I do the second layer of bubbles. And I wouldn't have patted it at all. But, live and learn. Um, as I'm recording this or doing the voiceover, I'm just saying it back for stuff that I've learned since I've even made this video. And more bubbles. And you're lucky because you didn't hear me making these ridiculous sounds with bubbles. Because you'd have been sick of me. It was loud. Now, I know it looks like it's covered, but for some reason, when I go in the second time, more of the acrylic paint tends to come through in the color. You can see that there now. There's more color deposit that comes through. I couldn't tell you, but it just does. So maybe it's a grower, not a shower. I don't know. So with this, I am actually 75% done. Well, I am done with the bubbles. Let's say that I'm done with the bubbles. I'm cleaning up. I'm going to let the bubbles die down, let it do its thing. I'm going to take it off of where it's at so I can remove it from the plate. I'm still going to keep it elevated off. And I know many people have messy workshops. I am unfortunately not one of those. And I'm actually working in my kitchen, so extra, not one of those. I clean as I go. There's literally nothing in the world that I am rushing for. I do clean up as I go. And yes, I'm just helping it along. Whatever surface that it touched, it's already done its thing. And that's why I put a beaker underneath it so that I'm able to lift it off without actually trying to smudge it and grab it from the top, because that's one thing I did learn after I slept on it was that I touched it too soon and had smudged some areas. I ended up liking it, but I kind of want to learn from touching it prior to it drying to not do that. So here it's still on a cup per se, a cup sitting inside of it. Again, the technique normally has it sitting on something and there's a rim of color. But for me, I didn't want a rim of color, so I don't want it sitting in the liquid of color once the bubbles have dissipated and it's just sitting in liquid. I don't want that. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a very nice effect. Almost creates an ombre, but I personally didn't want that for what I'm trying to create. And you'll see what I'm trying to create in it just a little bit. So that's why elevating it off onto, elevating it off and using another cup for it to sit up higher and making sure that the liquid isn't touching the rim of my jar. And this is my final piece. And now you can see why I didn't want my piece sitting on the plate. And inside of the paint solution, uh, because it'll give the ombre on the interior. That's the look that I was going for. I love how it came out. It's not perfect, but what piece is, I mean, it's perfect to you. This is perfect to me. I I love it. It's a peachy rose gold look. I call it a metallic overlay faux glaze look just because of the metallic final layer that I've put on, and I absolutely love it. Now, for the interior, I have a Rit Dye solution that I did dip with, and I just pour some inside and then use a sponge to bring it up the edge. That way it didn't fall over and stain the outside. And that's what I was left with, this interior ombre with the outside. So, yeah, thank you for watching.